I pulled out my black card, about to pay for Audrey Sheffield's tuition fees. The once naive Audrey suddenly turned cold and aloof. Live commentary scrolled frantically before my eyes. The heroine has reincarnated, back to the beginning of everything. This time, she can finally fulfill her unfulfilled love with her childhood sweetheart from her previous life. If it weren't for the supporting character flaunting his wealth and standing between the main couple in the last life, how could they have missed each other for a lifetime? I looked up, meeting Audrey's suddenly cold gaze. Only when she glanced at her childhood sweetheart did her eyes inexplicably well up with tears. Oh bollocks, the heroine has reincarnated. Reincarnated to her penniless, 18-year-old self. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. Standing close to Audrey Sheffield, I could clearly sense the change in her aura. It was an air of refinement, nurtured by years of affluence. Such an aura could never be found on a young, inexperienced girl. She glanced at the black card in my hand with disdain, her voice cold and detached. I've told you before, I'll find a way to pay for my own tuition. I don't need your money to insult my dignity. With that, she walked past me and threw herself into the arms of Giles Chadwick, who was glaring at me with hostility. Her nails dug deep into his back, gripping him with immense force, as if she was clutching a long-lost treasure. Giles, after everything we've been through, I've realized that you're the one I love most in this life. A chorus of whispers erupted around us. The live commentary on my screen scrolled faster and more densely. Wow, the heroine is so brave, confessing to her childhood sweetheart the moment she's reincarnated. Exactly. She's not beating around the bush at all. The evil supporting character must be stunned now. In her past life, the heroine reluctantly accepted your black card for tuition fees and agreed to be with you. Now that she's reincarnated, no amount of money will work. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the scrolling text that had appeared out of thin air. From within, I pieced together a fact. I was the supporting character they were talking about. The cruel young lord who used money to force the heroine to be with him. Audrey Sheffield standing before me had been reincarnated. In her previous life, when I had just entered university, I fell in love with her at first sight. Upon learning that she couldn't afford tuition fees, I promptly took out my black card and offered to cover all her expenses for the 4 years of university. I also asked her to be my girlfriend. After much deliberation, Audrey finally clutched the black card and agreed, albeit with humiliation. She buried her feelings for her childhood sweetheart, whom she had secretly loved for years. She believed that I had torn apart her love with Giles Chadwick, and she resented my lordly attitude, as I never stooped to comfort her. She felt insecure and sensitive. She considered herself inferior in love, with no dignity to speak of. Yet, having grown accustomed to a wealthy lifestyle, she didn't want to lose her cash cow. In the second year after graduation, when news of Giles Chadwick's marriage reached her, years of suppressed love surged forth. Audrey, dressed in a wedding gown, frantically drove to her childhood sweetheart's wedding, intending to dramatically interrupt the ceremony. However, distracted on the way, she collided with a lorry and died on the spot. Upon her reincarnation, the first thing she did was to confess her love to her childhood sweetheart, a love she had never expressed in her previous life, to mend the regrets of her past life. I frowned. What the live commentary said certainly matched my arrogant personality. But as they mentioned, Audrey had taken so much money from me, and after graduation, I had even introduced her to my network and helped her start a company, bringing her into high society. What was wrong with her being subservient to me, a young lord? What was wrong with her obeying my every word? Wasn't that how it should be? Did she expect me to treat her like a queen, hanging on her every word and living at her beck and call? I let out a cold laugh and decisively tossed the black card to a girl passing by. Audrey, who said I was going to pay for your tuition? The person I want to give this to is clearly her. Miss, would you like to be my girlfriend? What's going on? Did I miss something earlier? How did someone else get the black card? Listen, miss, having that black card won't do you any good. The supporting character only has eyes for the main girl. He'll never look at anyone else in this lifetime. It's just a tactical retreat, huh? The main girl won't fall for that trick. Audrey Sheffield froze, having just reincarnated. Her almond eyes filled with disbelief and confusion, as if she hadn't realized that this life's plot differed slightly from her previous one. But with her beloved right before her eyes, the fear of death and joy of reincarnation were still overwhelming her mind. It left her with no time to think further. I enthusiastically invited this beautiful girl to have dinner with me. The term had just started, and I wasn't yet familiar with the faces around me. As for Audrey, I had only heard whispers from classmates that she still hadn't managed to scrape together her tuition fees. That's why I kindly took out my black card, intending to ask if she'd like to be my girlfriend. After all, her innocent and charming face was exactly my type, making my head spin. Perhaps in my previous life I had truly loved Audrey. But in this life, love was nipped in the bud before it even began. I have plenty of money. I'm the sole heir to the Farley family fortune. I'm the young lord who's never faced any hardship. Why should I fixate on one crooked tree? I could date anyone I wanted. The beauty holding the black card in front of me was just as much my type. I chose the most upscale restaurant near the university, frowned as I flipped through the menu, then tossed it to the waiter. Bring us one of everything on your signature menu. The waiter scurried off, beaming with joy. The restaurant door swung open, drawing everyone's attention. I turned to look. It was the reincarnated main character, arm in arm with her beloved childhood sweetheart. In her previous life, Audrey Sheffield had been well nurtured by wealth. Her dining etiquette and posture were impeccable, without a single flaw. She carried herself entirely like a lady of aristocracy. She kept glancing in my direction, unable to conceal the disdain and irritation in her eyes. She seemed convinced that my presence here was solely to approach her, that she couldn't shake me off no matter what. She was even more certain that my dining with another girl was meant to make her jealous. Audrey sat with a straight back, elegantly ordering 7 or 8 signature dishes from the menu, then said with a loving expression, "Giles, the food here is quite ordinary. Just make do with it for now. When we have time, I'll definitely take you to taste the finest air-flown fresh produce. Then I'll take you to luxury boutiques to get some of the latest seasonal clothes." Giles Chadwick, hit by this unexpected windfall, was almost dizzy with joy. He glanced at me smugly and raised his voice. "Audrey, darling, today marks the first day of our relationship. I have a gift for you that I've been preparing for a long time." His face was beaming with pride. The live commentary said that Audrey and Giles were childhood sweethearts, just waiting to naturally confess their love after getting into the same university. When I took out my black card, Giles was seething with anger. The way he looked at me was exactly like I was a homewrecker stealing his love. But in the previous life, when Audrey agreed to be my girlfriend, she never mentioned Giles' existence. Did she? Giles mysteriously pulled out a simple box. Audrey's face lit up with excitement. The live commentary was also frantically screaming, "Oh my God! The first meeting of the main couple after reincarnation is so sweet. Things are moving so fast. It's happening so quickly I can barely keep up with their progress. Guess what's in the box?" I remember in the previous life, Crispin Farley gave the heroine a necklace worth over £100,000. Although the male lead isn't as rich as the villainous supporting character now, his gift must still be heartfelt. The box rested in his palm without much weight. Audrey opened it with great anticipation. Inside lay a necklace woven from raffia grass. Giles excitedly said, "Audrey, I made this specially during the summer holiday, waiting for us to get into the same university so I could confess and give it to you. Each strand of raffia grass represents an 'I love you.' So, do you like it?" The live commentary that had been buzzing suddenly fell silent. If I didn't know Audrey Sheffield had been reincarnated, I might have thought she would like this gift. Perhaps, for an 18-year-old Audrey, this handmade necklace would have been a rare and thoughtful gesture. Naive and beautiful, But beneath her youthful exterior lay the reincarnated soul of a 24-year-old. This 24-year-old was accustomed to gourmet food, had seen diamonds and emeralds, and luxury goods that came into her possession were as common as the tide. Just a few hours ago, when Audrey Sheffield died in the car accident, she was driving the Maybach from my garage. The soft leather steering wheel felt worlds apart from the roughly crafted wooden box in her palm. I smiled and took out a diamond necklace from my bag. It was a new seasonal piece I had casually bought earlier today while passing by a luxury boutique. Since Meredith Elwell had become my girlfriend, I couldn't show favoritism. I pushed the exquisite necklace box in front of her. "Darling, it's also our first day together. This is my gift to you. Do you like it?" No, wasn't this necklace given to the protagonist in the past life? How could it be given to someone else? The supporting character must still be playing hard to get, trying to attract the protagonist's attention. Trust me, he won't last long. Yes, the supporting character's actions now show he's completely lost his composure. The necklace sparkled brilliantly. Meredith Elwell, still not recovered from the shock of the black card, was met with a second surprise. Her hand trembled as she reached out to touch the necklace, but Audrey shouted, "Don't touch it. This is clearly mine." The rest of her words were swallowed back. I knew. She wanted to say that this necklace belonged to her. The live commentary mentioned that in her past life, she had worn this necklace for 6 years and loved it dearly. Every night before bed, she would take it off, carefully polish it, and place it back in its box. The past life differs from this one. Now, with her beloved childhood sweetheart by her side, she surely had no interest in these worldly possessions. Giles Chadwick, with a grim face, rolled his eyes at me. Is being rich so great? A nauseating smell of money. A necklace without thought. How can it compare to what I made by hand? Isn't that right, Audrey? Audrey finally came to her senses and forced out a smile. Giles is right. Just as she was about to pick up her chopsticks to serve her beloved childhood sweetheart, her phone suddenly rang. The knockoff phone's reception wasn't good. From not far away, I could clearly hear the cold female voice from the phone. "Hello, Miss Sheffield. It's time to pay your mother's hospital bills again." Audrey Sheffield's face suddenly changed color. The live commentary instantly became anxious. I almost forgot. The heroine's mother is seriously ill in hospital, waiting for money to save her life. I remember in her past life, the supporting character directly threw £100,000 at the hospital, and the surgery went very smoothly. Oh no, it can't be. The main characters have just met and shared a sweet moment. Surely the supporting character isn't going to use the heroine's mother's illness to force her to be with him. Why does the supporting character always linger like a ghost? Oh no, the supporting character is looking in the heroine's direction. He must think he's found a chance to chat her up. I remembered what a few classmates had said before I took out my black card. Audrey Sheffield's mother had been battling cancer for years, and all their family savings had been depleted. They were deeply in debt. I quickly looked back at Meredith Elwell. "No one in your family is ill, are they?" "No, no one." Audrey Sheffield stood up with a pale face, about to walk to the hospital, but was stopped by the waiter. "Madam, you haven't paid yet." There was a burst of laughter around. In her past life, with the backing of our Farley family, no matter which high-end restaurant she dined at, the owner would welcome her with a beaming smile and sycophantic manner. They would always say there was no rush to pay, and that they could settle up after multiple visits. The time since her reincarnation was too short. She obviously hadn't changed her living habits yet. The waiter had already presented the bill. £128. This amount of money wasn't even half the cost of a bottle of red wine the heroine used to drink in her past life. Audrey Sheffield instinctively reached for her black card. It wasn't until she felt nothing that a cold sweat suddenly broke out on her forehead. That's right. She had returned to when she was 18. She was younger, more naive, and also poorer. Now she was penniless, let alone £128. She didn't even have the £8 change. The waiter wore a professional smile. Audrey Sheffield gritted her teeth and turned to Giles Chadwick with a troubled expression. Giles, could you cover this bill for me? I'll transfer the money back to you later. Giles became alert. Audrey, my monthly allowance is only £150. This meal alone costs £120. How am I supposed to manage for the rest of the month? Don't worry, I have a way to make money, Audrey reassured him. What way could you possibly have to make money? Besides, you said you'd treat me. Why am I paying now? Giles grumbled, reluctant to foot the bill. The young couple, having confessed their feelings less than an hour ago, faced their first hurdle in their budding romance. Seizing the moment, I pulled out my card and called out, "Waiter!" Audrey turned away in disgust, as if I might pester her relentlessly the next second. Having returned from her past life, she wanted nothing to do with a spoiled lord like me. The humiliation of my throwing money at her in her previous life was still fresh in her mind. Her voice dripped with contempt. "Crispin, how many times do I have to tell you to stay away from me? I hate your persistence, and I'm sick of you interfering between Giles and me. Neither I nor my mother need your filthy money." I was astonished by Audrey's brazenness. Even if, according to the live commentary, I had been deeply in love with her in her past life, in this life we had never been together. The live commentary appeared just in time, as I merely pulled out my black card when I heard Audrey couldn't pay her tuition fees. I hadn't even uttered a word about her becoming my girlfriend. She had already declared her love for her childhood sweetheart. Before that, we hadn't even had any interaction. She was the one disgusted by her past life. Yet she was also the one unable to break free from it. I sneered. I was just calling the waiter to settle the bill. "Miss Sheffield, do you perhaps suffer from some delusion that makes you think I'm always pursuing you?" Audrey Sheffield's face turned pale. It was only then that she belatedly realized that in this life, we were now essentially strangers. The 6 years of entanglement from her previous life had not yet occurred. As this realization hit her, she stumbled back a step. The live commentary became frantic. What's going on? Why isn't the supporting character paying for Audrey's mother's treatment anymore? Exactly. Audrey's mother has cancer. If the supporting character doesn't provide the money, how will Audrey come up with that astronomical sum? Audrey's mother was the only one who comforted her during those 6 years of misery. Watching these comments scroll by, my face darkened. They called the 6 years I spent lavishing money on Audrey a life of misery. It was an experience of humiliation that Audrey couldn't bear to recall. In my previous life, after I provided financial assistance for Audrey's mother's treatment, what I received in return was their private scheming. Audrey, dear, men are never reliable. Listen to your mother. Once you get into the Farley family, keep all the money in your own hands. Don't let Crispin Farley have a penny to spare. My daughter is so beautiful and got into a good university. With so many young men chasing after you, we can't agree to marry you off to him unless the Farley family pays a bride wealth of £888,000. Audrey nodded obediently, enduring the humiliation. Unfortunately, the vast wealth of the Farley family was not something an outsider like her could access. All she could get was just a trickle that slipped through my fingers. If she obeyed, I'd let a penny slip. If she didn't, she wouldn't get even that. How could a young lord like me, with my background, be foolish enough to hand over the family fortune? And why would I actually marry a victim from the slums? Audrey envied and longed for everything in the Farley family. Yet she was helpless. Meredith Elwell couldn't help but speak up. "Miss Sheffield, it's you who has been constantly pursuing Crispin Farley, isn't it? He's never paid you any attention, yet you keep acting like you're being coerced and insulted. It's truly laughable." Audrey's face darkened, and her tone turned acidic. "Elwell, you country bumpkin. How dare you speak to me in that tone? Do you have any idea who I am?" Her voice was shrill, tinged with the haughtiness that only money could breed. In her past life, after her company had taken off, countless people had fawned over her, calling her Ms. Sheffield. The constant adulation had gone to her head, though Audrey hadn't realized it yet. At this moment, the clothes she wore were washed out, even shabbier than Meredith's. I raised an eyebrow and clapped my hands. Ms. Sheffield is right. Meredith looked at me, her eyes brimming with hurt. I gave her outfit a once-over. It was plain and cheap. Wearing that, didn't she look like a country bumpkin? I frowned and waved my hand dismissively, channeling the nonchalance of a lord. These rags? I wouldn't wear them even if they were given to me for free. Meredith, you're coming with me to the shopping center right now. You're not leaving until you've bought at least £10,000 worth of clothes. Stepping out of the shopping center with several bags in hand, Meredith Elwell found herself in a state of shock once again. She struggled to process what had just happened. I lazily lit a cigarette. My girlfriend deserves only the best, after all. Everything I gave to Audrey Sheffield in my past life, I won't spend a penny on her in this one. The live commentary was still discussing Audrey's current situation. She was now overwhelmed with financial troubles, tuition fees, living expenses, and her mother's medical bills. If Giles Chadwick had been her only regret in her past life, then in this one, after resolving that single regret, 20 new ones had surfaced. On the way back to university, I gleefully read through the live commentary. Audrey, don't go for the supporting character. He'll keep pestering you for years. I'd rather see you in a sweet romance with the main guy. Poor Audrey. She'll be forced back to the supporting character's side again. Who could stand that lord's temperament anyway? Sigh. Is there no way to escape the control of the cruel supporting character even after reincarnation? As I scrolled down the comments, sure enough, I spotted Audrey's proud figure in front of the dormitory. She seemed to have been waiting for me for a long time. Upon seeing me, she first gave a bleak smile, then, as if resigning herself to fate, said, "Crispin Farley, I've lost. I still can't escape your pursuit. How about this? If you give me the black card and promise to tone down your lordly attitude, I'm willing to agree to be your girlfriend." Her shoulders trembled slightly as she spoke. It seemed as if she had made an enormous decision, or perhaps a huge concession. Her face even showed traces of humiliation and embarrassment. Her dignity was truly precious. She dared to think it could rival my unlimited black card. I smiled mockingly. I'd never seen someone ask for a meal so stubbornly. I couldn't help but remind her, "Miss Sheffield, do we know each other?" Audrey Sheffield sneered. "Crispin Farley, no one knows you better than I do. Do you think this retreat will make me look at you differently? Come on, just give me the black card. My mum's waiting urgently at the hospital." Her tone was very confident. She was certain I would indulge her. In my past life, I had been with her for 6 years. If it wasn't for love, it would have been impossible to persist for so long. She had seen me madly in love. She had also witnessed my flamboyant displays of affection. As the favored one, she had always been fearless. The unpaid bills for Audrey Sheffield's mother at the hospital couldn't be delayed any longer. A mess was waiting for her to clean up with money. Meredith Elwell decisively stepped in front of me, shattering Audrey Sheffield's arrogance. "When exactly did Crispin Farley say he wanted you as his girlfriend?" The last sentence struck Audrey Sheffield like a bolt from the blue, leaving her stunned on the spot. She stood there in shock for a long while, suddenly remembering. The first thing she did after her reincarnation was to confess her feelings to Giles Chadwick. As for me, I hadn't actually asked her to be my girlfriend or anything like that. The entanglements between us from her previous life hadn't happened yet in this one. But quickly, Audrey shook her head as if mocking herself. The 6 years of complications in her past life were truly unforgettable. Each and every incident. She couldn't believe that I had never loved her. With a sigh, her voice filled with undisguised exhaustion. "All right, Crispin Farley, I admit that my confession to Giles upset you, but I really can't delay things with my mum any longer. Give me the black card, and I'll let bygones be bygones." Seeing Audrey's dejected compromise, the live commentary exploded with concern. The heroine has finally reincarnated. How can she get tangled up with the supporting character again? And so begins 6 years of humiliation. But without the supporting character, the heroine would just be a poor student now. Even if she wanted to start a business, she'd have no capital. How is she supposed to raise money? I looked at Audrey. answering both her and the live commentary. If you don't have money, figure it out yourself. Or why don't you ask around and see who's willing to pay for a girlfriend? You could apply for the position. It seemed I had wounded Audrey Sheffield's pride, as she hadn't appeared for a whole month. I still remember her last words before she left, gritting her teeth. "Crispin Farley, you never bother to change that lordly attitude of yours. You're arrogant and rude, and you'll never realize just how detestable your temper is. As punishment, you can cool off by yourself. For the next month, don't expect to see me at all." The reward came too suddenly. I felt a sense of unreality. We were in the same department but different classes. In such a vast campus, it was extremely difficult to chance upon someone. After Audrey's disappearance, I began to interact more with Meredith Elwell. She would quietly wait for me every day at the bottom of the dormitory building to go to class together, and even volunteered to help me fetch water and buy meals. My roommate Arlo Avery gruffly intercepted, "Young lord, young lady, you two just focus on your romance. This old retainer will handle these menial tasks for you." Arlo had no parents and grew up eating from many homes. When he got into university, he had only a few pounds in his pocket and a sack on his back as he embarked on his difficult journey to pursue education. On the first day of school, I offered to pay him £20 each time he fetched water or bought meals for me. He excitedly called me father for 3 days and took on all these tasks. I had already put Audrey out of my mind. However, the live commentary would occasionally broadcast updates about her situation, keeping her presence known. For instance, she was borrowing money from various sources to fill financial holes. But how much money could university students have? It was merely a drop in the bucket, unable to solve the problem. Penniless, she had to rely on Giles Chadwick for meals. The lovers who once regretted not being able to stay together now found their relationship increasingly strained. To save money, Audrey, who had never worked part-time in her previous life, actually started taking on jobs. I thought I would never run into Audrey again, but I unexpectedly encountered her when I was accompanying Meredith to the university canteen for a meal. I usually only appeared here on weekends. Audrey came Monday to Friday, as her weekend workplace provided meals. We were like two parallel lines that would never intersect. But this weekend, the parallel lines miraculously crossed. Audrey, who should have been off campus on weekends, was sitting properly in the canteen. There was a subtle change in her demeanor. When she first reincarnated, Audrey Sheffield carried an air of elegance nurtured by wealth, a certain grace in her every move. Now, all that remained was exhaustion and agitation etched across her face. She had lost weight. Her brow was furrowed with unnatural tension. As Crispin and Meredith walked hand in hand into the dining hall, they saw Giles Chadwick mysteriously carrying a tray of food, exclaiming excitedly, "Audrey, I've managed to grab the best meal in the cafeteria today. Try it." He proudly placed the food in front of Audrey. It was a 7-pound portion of stew, greasy and tasteless. I could clearly see the disdain on her face. "How can the main character stomach this food?" someone commented. Indeed, in her past life, every meal was gourmet. "How can she eat this stuff every day after reincarnation?" Another chimed in. "And look at her clothes, the whole outfit costs only a few quid." In her past life, she wore nothing but the latest luxury brands. But everything the main character had was given to her by the supporting character. Without him, she would have lived this life anyway. This time, she's just returned to her true starting point. With that statement, the live commentary fell silent. It was once said that after I started dating Audrey in her past life, we never ate at the university cafeteria. Every meal was either a fancy restaurant or fresh sashimi plated and delivered to the university by the butler. As for clothes, we would go shopping at luxury boutiques every week, filling up an entire car. Audrey rarely wore the same outfit twice. She was like a proud little princess, adapting quickly to this luxurious lifestyle. Day after day, she became increasingly picky about food and clothing. Suddenly returning to bland stew, she naturally found it hard to swallow. She also felt uncomfortable in her cheap clothes. After hesitating for a long while, Audrey finally put down her fork. She stammered to Giles sitting across from her. "Giles, I want to ask you for a favor." "What is it?" Can you lend me £30,000? Giles Chadwick choked on a piece of shepherd's pie, instinctively raising his voice. "What did you say? You're asking me to lend you £30,000. You've been eating and drinking at my expense, and you still haven't paid back the £128 you borrowed for meals 2 weeks ago. Now you have the audacity to ask me for £30,000. Countless piercing stares turned towards Audrey Sheffield. I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief. Her past life of luxury had truly spoiled Audrey's taste. Giles Chadwick's family wasn't much better off than Audrey's. How could a student possibly come up with £30,000? Giles continued, filled with righteous indignation. "Do you realize that my parents don't even earn £10,000 a year? How dare you ask me for such an enormous sum? You use my meal voucher every day in the canteen, and then complain that the food isn't as good as fresh ingredients flown in from abroad. Your pockets are emptier than your face is clean. Were you eating gourmet food in your dreams?" Audrey's face turned as red as a beetroot. She couldn't help but complain. "I'm in this situation because of you. I used to spend at least £100 on every meal. Even the cheapest wine I drank cost over £1,500 a bottle. Everyone used to address me as Miss Sheffield with respect." Giles laughed as if he'd heard a joke. "Audrey, do you think I just met you yesterday? Someone who can't even scrape together enough for tuition fees, constantly dreaming of being a socialite, living in luxury. You must be delusional." A burst of laughter echoed around them. This finally woke Audrey from her memories of her past life's extravagance. She had been reincarnated for a month now, choosing a path completely different from her previous life. "What's going on? I came to see a sweet school romance. How did it turn into watching them argue all the time? Without money, there's no sweet romance for you to see." Audrey irritably looked up towards the door, suddenly noticing me. In an instant, her back straightened, her furrowed brow smoothed out. She put on a confident smile. Her gaze towards me held a hint of expectation. I admired my newly purchased luxury watch as I walked past Audrey Sheffield. This timepiece was worth over £30,000. The dial's luster was a bit lacking. Next time, I should choose an even better one. I then lazily glanced at the canteen food, frowning in disgust. I called out to Meredith, "Let's eat outside the university." Meredith quickly nodded. I walked straight past Audrey, heading towards the exit without a sideways glance. The confidence on Audrey's face crumbled. After I had walked away, she actually left Giles Chadwick behind and shouted after me, "Crispin Farley, why don't you?" The rest of her words got stuck in her throat when she caught sight of the Maybach parked outside the canteen. The luxury car was ostentatiously parked on the path everyone had to take to the canteen. Many students cast envious glances, whispering and muttering. Some admired the car's opulence. Others complained about my wealthy extravagance. Audrey let out an amused sigh. "So, you wanted to surprise me. But I don't like being so high profile. Don't do this again. I remember, in my past life, the main character died in a car accident while driving this very car to meet her childhood sweetheart. Yes, in the past life, this car was given to the main character after graduation. I didn't expect the supporting character to bring it out early in this life. Our main character will always belong to the male lead. How could she be swayed by a luxury car? Next comes the highlight moment of putting someone in their place. Audrey clearly loved this car. In her past life, she had driven it countless times through the streets of York, turning heads everywhere. She naturally opened the car door, only to be angrily rebuked by the chauffeur in the driver's seat. "This is the car our young lord sent for Miss Elwell. How dare just anyone try to social climb their way in?" Audrey Sheffield's hand froze in midair, as if struck by an electric shock. Lowering her gaze, she gathered the elegant composure that had been absent for the past fortnight. "Mr. Warwick, this car is clearly mine. Have you forgotten even that?" Her voice was laced with anger. In her past life, this car had been hers. But what about this life? I let out a cold laugh, swiftly opening the car door and sliding in with Meredith. Then I slammed it shut. Audrey quickly withdrew her hand, narrowly avoiding having her forefingers crushed. Through the window, I looked her up and down with disdain. Audrey, you really ought to break that nasty habit of coveting other people's possessions. This car is a gift for my girlfriend. What's it got to do with you? In Audrey's eyes, I had always been the arrogant young lord. Naturally, my words were meant to be imperious and merciless. The joy that had just blossomed in Audrey's eyes was now utterly shattered. Her gaze swept over me, filled with fear. Wasn't this car supposed to be for me? I drove it for a full 2 years in my past life. The voice was soft, but I heard it crystal clear. It had been so long since her reincarnation. Was she still thinking about her past life? The life she once despised had now become as unattainable as the moon's reflection in water. The live commentary was also dumbfounded. What's going on? It seems the supporting character doesn't love the heroine at all anymore. The heroine reincarnated for nothing. I thought I'd be watching a sweet romance between the main characters, but good grief, they've had 15 arguments in just 2 weeks since confessing their feelings. And I expected to see the heroine put the supporting character in his place for his persistence. But instead, it's been the heroine getting schooled all along. You all say Lord Farley is obsessed with Audrey, but from what I see, isn't it the heroine who's clinging to the supporting character? I shifted my gaze from the live commentary. I am Lord Farley, born with a silver spoon in my mouth. How could I possibly be obsessed with such an unremarkable woman? If Audrey Sheffield felt that not confessing to her childhood sweetheart in her past life was her greatest regret, then in this reincarnation, let her fulfill that regret completely. The car sped off with a press of the accelerator. In the distance, I saw Giles Chadwick grabbing the heroine's collar, shouting and arguing with her. And Audrey, still staring blankly at the car's exhaust fumes, allowed him to yell and pull at her. Turning away, I complained, "Mr. Warwick, driving into the university is too ostentatious. If this happens a few more times, the school administration will want to have a word with me." Mr. Warwick nodded quickly. Of course, of course. Next time I'll wait for you at the university gates. Young lord, since you don't have a girlfriend at the moment, perhaps you might consider what your father mentioned earlier about an arranged marriage with the Elwell family? Sitting in the private booth of the pub, I stared blankly at Meredith Elwell before me. On the way here, I had irritably refused, not wanting to enter an arranged marriage with a stranger. Uncle Lowell exclaimed in surprise, "But she's not a stranger. You've been with Miss Elwell for so long." As he said this, Meredith curled up in the back seat of the car, making herself as small as a quail. For people in our social circle, arranged marriages are set in stone. It's not about love, but about tying 2 family businesses together to increase resilience against risks. In my WhatsApp messages, there was still one from my father. "Good son, I'm relieved to see you getting along so well with Miss Elwell. If it's suitable, we'll arrange the engagement." At this moment, I felt like a true playboy lord. Meredith, with a pale face, nervously tried to explain to me, "Crispin, I just heard you wanted to date a poor student, so I dressed a bit shabbily. But I hadn't done anything yet. I had just found you in the crowd when you suddenly stuffed a black card into my hands and asked me to be your girlfriend. I didn't expect happiness to come so suddenly." She said she had applied to the same university as me, just to confess the love she had harbored for years. She just didn't expect that I would lavishly keep her as a mistress first. Although the process was a bit different, the result was what mattered. I said with a melancholic tone, "So, you're already this wealthy, yet you still tried to scam my black card?" She hurriedly explained, "No, I haven't touched a penny of that black card. You didn't tell me the PIN when you gave it to me. Did I not give her the PIN? Have I been spending Miss Elwell's money all this time? Am I actually the gigolo being kept?" Embarrassed, I pinched the black card with 2 fingers, wishing I could burrow into the sofa cushions along with the card. I even considered giving up 3% of the profits in the collaboration with the Elwell family to salvage my shattered dignity. The live commentary was already in an uproar, scrolling so densely it was impenetrable. How did the plot change so much after reincarnation? I remember there was an arranged marriage in the past life too, but didn't Crispin Farley reject it on the spot, using the excuse of already having a girlfriend? Wasn't the supporting character in love with the female lead? Who's still unclear about this? In this life, Crispin Farley has clearly never been in love with the female lead. A waiter pushing open the door with drinks broke the awkward atmosphere in the room. Our eyes met. Drinks spilled all over the floor. The waiter was first shocked, then angrily embarrassed. Crispin Farley, what are you two doing alone here? Audrey Sheffield appeared at the door of the private room, wearing a tight-fitting business suit dress. The live commentary had said that the part-time job she found was serving drinks to customers at the bar. Audrey's face turned ashen, her gaze darting back and forth between us. She quickly stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. Why are you alone with her? I yanked my hand away. This is my fiancée. Why wouldn't I be with her? Should I be with you instead? The Farley and Elwell families both knew we were together now. Everyone was pleased with the match. Audrey was stunned by the word, fiancé. The dim light of the private room couldn't hide her pale face. After a long moment, she finally deflated, letting out a bitter laugh. Crispin Farley, I know you're with her to spite me. Even in this new life, I still end up entangled with you. She turned her face away, as if the words were difficult to utter. You've won. You've really won. I agree to be your girlfriend. Wait, I interrupted. Did I ask you anything? You've already shamelessly agreed. Audrey Sheffield closed her eyes, as if gathering great courage, and confessed everything. Do you know? I've been reincarnated. In my past life, you pulled out your black card and asked me to be your girlfriend. You even gave my mum £100,000 for her medical treatment. Even that Maybach was a gift for me. We were together for 6 years. You had a terrible temper, but I always kept tolerating it. Although I was always thinking about Giles Chadwick in my past life, this reincarnation has made me realize my true feelings. I still love you. Audrey probably didn't notice the hint of nostalgia in her voice that she couldn't perceive herself. The heroine certainly reaped a lot of benefits from that relationship, I mused. Getting so many perks from just dating? My lord, you might as well consider me. Don't be so rigid about gender. I remained silent. Gender is still something to be particular about. After all that talk, it seems the heroine, having gone through tough times, is now reminiscing about how good things were with the supporting character in her past life. Suddenly, I realize how clear-headed the supporting character is. In the past life, although he dated the heroine and helped her grow, he wouldn't easily enter into marriage and hand over his family fortune. In this life, when the heroine confesses to someone else, the supporting character immediately lets go of his feelings, never looking back. The last sentence was a revelation to me. So in her past life, what Audrey had been obsessing over was that I didn't marry her and hand over all the Farley family assets. In her mind, I should have been like a doormat, offering up all the Farley family wealth with both hands, and then be a perfectly devoted husband, letting her run the household. I may be a playboy, but I'm not brain dead. Even people of my own social standing wouldn't dare to covet my wealth. Yet Audrey saw it as something already in her grasp. When she couldn't get it, she became bitter with hatred. I haven't even thought about coveting my father's assets yet. How dare she? The atmosphere in the private room grew tense. Meredith Elwell hesitantly stood up and interjected. I know the standard recipe for a leading lady includes a gambling father, a critically ill mother, a brother in school, and her own broken past. But I never imagined it would now escalate to a metaphysical competition. She turned her head towards me, looking pitiful. Crispin, I don't have such a tragic background. Both my parents are alive and well, and my brother is studying abroad without any issues. I'm not reincarnated either, so I don't have any metaphysical buffs. Do you think I still have a chance to be the leading lady? There's a chance, I said earnestly, taking her hand. In the end, Audrey Sheffield was dragged away by several security guards. As she was being led out, she shouted, "Crispin, I'm the one you truly love. You shouldn't be with anyone else. We were together in our past life, I swear." Once our arranged marriage was settled, both families immediately hosted an engagement party for us. My father arranged for me to study abroad, majoring in finance. Before I left, he patted my shoulder affectionately. "Son, now that you're in this arranged marriage, you can't just coast through university anymore. You need to study finance properly. The Farley family business will depend on you in the future." I tentatively asked, "Dad, how about some pocket money? Just a small target will do." "Get out," he retorted. I knew it. I hadn't even thought about my father's wealth yet. How could Audrey Sheffield think she could get her hands on it? On the day I left, Arlo was crying his eyes out. "Young master, how will I manage without you? I was planning to serve you and the young mistress until you graduated from university. Boo-hoo. I've paid your tuition fees and left you some living expenses. Don't go out looking like a ragamuffin and embarrass me anymore. Young master, I'll truly miss you. Ha! I'll pay you back after I graduate, of course. And I'll think of you every day. Ha ha! Stop crying. That laughter is too grating." As I boarded the plane with my luggage, the long silent live commentary started scrolling again. "Audrey Sheffield is going mad looking for Crispin Farley. Is she looking for a supporting character? No, she's looking for a cash cow. Look, she still remembers Crispin Farley's phone number from her past life and wants to call him." I glanced down at my own phone. I was about to leave the country. Naturally, I had changed my old number. Audrey Sheffield had been anxiously waiting outside the dormitory for days. Money was tight everywhere, and the hospital bills couldn't be delayed any longer. After much deliberation, she came up with a plan. She could proactively ask Crispin Farley for a loan. Naturally, Crispin would seize this opportunity to suggest they start dating. After all, in her previous life, when he learned she couldn't afford tuition, Crispin had casually pulled out a black card, smiling charmingly as he asked, "Audrey, I can cover your tuition and living expenses, but you'll have to agree to be my girlfriend. What do you say?" Audrey's long nails dug into her palm. This time, if Crispin made the same offer, she would accept without hesitation. But after waiting for days, there was no sign of him, until an impatient Arlo Avery told her, "Stop waiting." Crispin Farley left for his studies abroad the day after he got engaged to Meredith Elwell. He won't be coming back. Audrey's ears began to ring. Engaged? Studying abroad? In her previous life, he hadn't gotten engaged, and going abroad was out of the question. They had been together for 6 full years, through university, shedding their naivety. She had only confessed to her childhood sweetheart on the first day after her reincarnation. How could things have changed so drastically between her past and present lives? Trembling, Audrey pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. The moment the call connected, a mechanical female voice interrupted her thoughts. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service." Audrey Sheffield stood frozen in place. Crispin Farley's number was out of service? She double-checked the phone number carefully. There was no mistake. The digits that had been etched in her mind for 6 years in her past life had become a disconnected number in this one. Audrey remained motionless for a long while. Long enough for Giles Chadwick to give her a hard shove from behind. "Audrey, pay up. You still owe me that £128 for the meals, and you haven't paid it back yet." Her childhood sweetheart before her was stingy and mean, without a trace of the gentleness from her past life. Audrey wearily rubbed her brow. If she had still harbored affection for her childhood friend on the day she returned to this life, after more than a month of harsh reality, only Crispin Farley remained in her heart. Now she had barely over £100 left. It was money she had earned from working part-time at a pub. This small amount wasn't even enough to cover her medical bills. Audrey was about to ask for a few more days when a girl suddenly pointed at her nose and shouted, "You're so shameless. Hurry up and pay my boyfriend back. Audrey's head buzzed again. Crispin Farley had said he had a fiancée. Now it turned out Giles Chadwick had also found himself a girlfriend. Everything in this world seemed to have hit fast forward, moving at an unbelievable pace. She glanced at the girl in front of her and miraculously realized that this was the same girl from the wedding photo Giles Chadwick had shared in the group chat in her past life. In this life, because Giles Chadwick had no money and went out to work, he had met this girl 4 years earlier. Round and round. Her reincarnation had caused both Crispin Farley and Giles Chadwick to meet their loved ones ahead of schedule. After reluctantly handing over the last of his money, Giles Chadwick sneered and left with his girlfriend in tow. Audrey's phone rang. She excitedly fumbled for it, but upon realizing it wasn't Crispin Farley's number, she answered dejectedly. An elderly woman's voice came through. "Audrey dear, the hospital is chasing us for the medical bills. Please think of something quickly." Frustration welled up, tearing at her already fragile heart. All the troubles since her reincarnation were overwhelming. Audrey snapped irritably into the phone. "Can't you figure something out yourself if you don't have money? Other parents support their children. Why are you always on my tail asking for money? Look at Crispin Farley. His parents give him tens of thousands of pounds in pocket money every month. What about you?" On the other end, there was muffled crying and endless nagging. "Oh, what a wretched life I have, raising such an ungrateful daughter. You haven't visited me in the hospital for over a month, and now you won't even spare a penny." Audrey abruptly ended the call. She then rented a bike share. As she rode, she kept reassuring herself. Crispin Farley must still care for her. He couldn't possibly have gotten engaged and gone abroad without a word. He was probably hiding because he was angry about her confession to Giles Chadwick. If she could just find him, offer an olive branch and say a few soft words, this life wouldn't repeat the path of the last one. They would still end up together. Once she became Crispin Farley's girlfriend, she'd never have to worry about money again. Audrey knew the location of Crispin Farley's mansion by heart. In her past life, she had lived there for 2 years, familiar with every flower and tree. But in this life, the butler stopped her warily. "This is a private residence. You can't enter without permission." Audrey, flustered, mixed up her past and present lives. "I'm Crispin Farley's girlfriend. I've lived here for 2 years. Don't you remember me?" The butler looked her up and down, sneering. "You should have done your research before trying to social climb. Our young master just got engaged to Miss Elwell. They've both gone abroad to study." "What girlfriend are you talking about?" "Engaged. Gone abroad." Audrey felt her blood run cold. Crispin Farley had really left without a word? He didn't love her anymore? Her phone rang again, intrusively cutting through her thoughts. It was an unknown number. Audrey's eyes lit up. She answered with trembling hands, only to slowly collapse to the ground. A cold female voice came through the phone. "Miss Sheffield, your mother's medication has been stopped. Please settle the overdue medical bills immediately." The days at university flew by. Audrey Sheffield seemed like an insignificant passerby in my life. She appeared with great fanfare and disappeared without a trace. But I was well aware of her situation over these past few years. The live commentary would occasionally update her status, making her presence known in my vibrant life. Her childhood sweetheart, whom she had pined for in her past life, broke up with her decisively. After twists and turns, she unexpectedly encountered her lover from her past life, and the two began a passionate romance. Her mother passed away quickly due to lack of funds for medical treatment. On her deathbed, she cursed loudly in the hospital, calling her daughter an ungrateful person. Audrey was left all alone. From a pampered young lady who had never lifted a finger, she became a hard worker juggling 3 part-time jobs alongside her studies. Despite this, she still struggled financially. The enormous debt weighed heavily on her, making it difficult to breathe. In her second year at university, Audrey chose to drop out. She began a long period of struggling to make ends meet. While working, she never forgot to inquire about my whereabouts. Unfortunately, we were thousands of miles apart. The cost of such a long journey and living expenses abroad were beyond what she could save from her part-time jobs. It wasn't until 4 years later that I completed my studies. On my first day back in England after studying abroad, I looked out at the familiar sight of York. I received a call from Arlo. "Young Lord, the university is organizing a class reunion. Do you want to come?" Arlo had shed his once sallow and gaunt appearance. He had become steady and composed, gaining experience at one of my domestic branches in the UK. He dramatically came forward to embrace me, exclaiming excitedly, "Lord Chadwick, it's been years since I've seen you. Do you know how much I've missed you? My lord, why are you frowning? If something's troubling you, tell me and let your old retainer help ease your burden." I rubbed my temples. The company has business abroad, but we can't find a suitable person for a long-term overseas posting. Arlo perked up, volunteering himself. What a coincidence. I'm the perfect candidate for an overseas assignment. It was then that I remembered Arlo was an orphan. He had no family ties. Looking at it this way, wasn't he indeed the ideal person for an overseas post? Having resolved my biggest concern, I finally let out a sigh of relief. I hadn't spent much time with this group of classmates. In the entire class, the only one I was truly familiar with was Arlo. Just before the reunion began, someone arrived fashionably late. They burst through the door, bringing with them a whirlwind of energy. Audrey Sheffield had arrived. Audrey Sheffield and I were in the same department but not exactly classmates. Her sudden appearance was quite unexpected. Curious eyes gathered on her as she entered. I could barely recognize her. She was now about the same age as when she died in a car accident in her previous life. I remembered the live commentary once mentioned that, in her past life, she had lived a privileged life and never worked a day. Her every move used to exude elegant grace. It was hard to associate that image with the tired-looking young woman before me. The long-absent live commentary began to scroll again. I almost didn't recognize the main character. Above poster, "She's not the main character anymore. She's a supporting character." No, not even that, just an extra. You can tell Audrey is really poor now. It's been nearly 6 years since her reincarnation. She's clumsy at work, fails repeatedly at business, and keeps going on about how she used to be Miss Sheffield. How could she not be poor? And she still insists on fancy food, often muttering about how she used to eat gourmet meals. I couldn't imagine how poor she might be. Perhaps, maybe, she could only huddle in a cramped 1,000-square-foot duplex, eating bland meals of 4 dishes and a soup every day, then stand on the balcony with a worried face, overlooking the glittering river view. Indeed, it seemed she was living quite miserably. Audrey had clearly taken care to groom herself, but the frown lines between her brows betrayed her frequent anxiety and unease. Her clothes looked cheap, lacking the designer outfits that used to flatter her figure in her past life. Not to mention her bare neck and wrists, devoid of any eye-catching jewelry. She could barely lift her head to look at me, but still mustered the courage to approach, saying softly, "Crispin Farley, I heard your class is having a reunion and you'll be there, so I wanted to come see you. How have you been all these years?" The reunion was filled with faces I barely recognized. I politely excused myself from everyone and walked past Audrey Sheffield on my way out. She followed me, unwilling to give up. Outside the hotel, it was pouring rain. I stood at the roadside, sheltered under my umbrella. Audrey stood between us, getting drenched. Her lips quivered a few times before she finally spoke. Knowing the answer, yet clinging to a glimmer of hope, she tentatively asked, "Crispin, do you still love me?" I turned my head, smiling distantly. "Miss Sheffield, you might want to think about that carefully. It seems we've never really known each other, so how can we speak of love or not? As you wished. In this life, you never accepted that initial black card. And I've never had any connection with you. From beginning to end, we've always been strangers." After I gave my definitive answer, a few lines of live commentary appeared in the sky. But they were fading away, a sign that they were about to disappear completely. Actually, Lord Farley was never a lovesick fool. Even in his past life, he wasn't stupid enough to sacrifice any core interests. Do you think Lord Farley can imagine what kind of life Audrey is living now? He probably can. That was close. Audrey almost married into the aristocracy. After her reincarnation, Audrey is finally living the life she was meant to live. The live commentary suddenly disappeared. Audrey Sheffield, standing before me, visibly despaired. She clutched her head, overwhelmed with anguish. I was wrong. The moment I reincarnated, before you had even spoken a word to me, I severed the connection between us. Crispin, in my past life, I called you Crispin for 6 long years. How did it come to this? How could I lose the most important person in my life? Crispin, do you know? I've always wanted to go abroad to find you, but despite working tirelessly for years, I couldn't save enough for a return flight and 6 months living expenses overseas. In my past life, that amount was merely the cost of a bottle of wine. How could this happen? How? The water streaming down her face could have been rain or tears. I knew her work had been grueling. Her face bore the weariness and fine lines of someone who had weathered many storms. A car's headlights flashed in our direction. A Maybach pulled up beside me. The door opened, and Meredith Elwell stepped out with an umbrella. She still had that same vibrant, youthful appearance. She glanced behind me and exclaimed in surprise, "Crispin, isn't that the reincarnated broken sister? Has the aristocratic version been updated to include a rain-soaked performance of self-pity?" She lowered her eyebrows. "Crispin, I may not have a broken family or metaphysical powers, but I can also improvise a scene of self-pity right here and now." The black card that Audrey had eagerly pushed away in her past life upon reincarnating. It had led to the peculiar connection between Meredith and me in this life. I teased with a smile, "You don't need to act out any self-pity to win my heart." 31 Epilogue, Audrey. I learned of Crispin Farley's marriage from the news. When I heard this news, I was curled up in my cramped rented attic, listlessly scrolling through my phone. Beside me were piles of takeaway containers and drink bottles. These cheap, junk foods, which I wouldn't have given a second glance in my past life, had become my daily sustenance. Crispin Farley's beaming face suddenly appeared before me. He was still the same dashing young lord of the Farley family, his every gesture exuding an unmistakable air of nobility and ease. The news article spelled it out clearly. He was set to marry the Elwell family's daughter. Their family's second joint project was also about to launch. I stared at Crispin Farley's smiling face, lost in thought. The gap between our social classes was too vast. A watch he could buy on a whim would cost me 10 years of savings from my current job. We were unlikely to ever cross paths again on the streets of York. Most disheartening of all, I could only learn about him through the news. In the years since my reincarnation, it's not that I hadn't considered starting a business. I approached several successful businessmen I had worked with in my past life, but they all firmly turned me away. Only one, after hearing my fervent promises of profitability, lecherously pointed me in a certain direction. "Miss Sheffield, anyone could make money from this venture. So, what do you think you should offer in return?" It suddenly dawned on me. My past life's business success wasn't due to my intelligence or business acumen. It was because I had the Farley family's backing. It was Crispin Farley who had paved the way for me, ensuring everyone treated me with courtesy and respect. What had I done then? I had constantly put up a prickly defense, trying to mask my deep-seated insecurity. All those years I tolerated his lordly temperament. Wasn't he also constantly treading carefully to protect my pride? I took one last look at the news of Crispin Farley's wedding. A daring thought crossed my mind. I would go and stop his wedding. The idea made my blood rush. Perhaps he would suddenly remember me, suddenly fall in love with me. Perhaps we could return to the love we shared in our past life. The car sped down the high street. It was a second-hand vehicle I had bought after scrimping and saving. Just over £3,000. It had emptied my entire year's savings. It wasn't as comfortable as the Bentley from my past life. That Bentley flashed through my mind for a moment. My heart suddenly jolted. Today's scene seemed to overlap with my past life. In my previous life, I was standing on the balcony of the Farley mansion when I learned through a classmate's WhatsApp group that Giles Chadwick was getting married. I had been just as frantic and impulsive then. The Bentley had raced down the road, the accelerator pressed to the floor. At that time, I had only one thought in my mind. That was to stop Giles Chadwick's wedding. I instinctively glanced at the time, March 18th, the day Giles Chadwick got married in my past life, and the day Crispin Farley is getting married in this life. In that instant, my blood ran cold. Bang! Distracted for just a few seconds, the car veered off course and crashed hard into the barrier. In the moment before losing consciousness, I surprisingly found myself smiling with relief. If I could be reincarnated back to 18 again, the first thing I'd do when I opened my eyes would be to accept that black card. When Crispin Farley asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend, I would hold him tight and loudly proclaim, "Crispin, I do." When I opened my eyes again, I was greeted by a stark white ceiling. The pungent smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. I struggled to sit up. There was no Crispin Farley, no university. I anxiously grabbed the white coat beside me and asked, "Doctor, have I been reincarnated? What day is it?" The doctor gave me a complex look, then turned to the nurse behind him and said, "Take her for another CT scan." She hit her head on the steering wheel. There might be a blood clot causing confusion. My face was reflected in the smooth surface of the machine. Still young, but weary and careworn. It was me with nothing left. Dejectedly, I picked up the cracked phone beside me. Crispin Farley's wedding was being shared all over the internet. Everyone marveled at the lavish ceremony of the century, every detail exuding wealth. What was even more remarkable was that this aristocratic union seemed to be based on true love. During Crispin Farley's years studying abroad, his fiancée, who wasn't even in the same country, flew to Europe twice a month without fail. The thick stack of boarding passes had become a testament to their love. I put down the phone, feeling lost. Crispin Farley was married. Giles Chadwick was married too, to the same woman as in my past life. Only I was left behind, confused and at a loss. On the day of my discharge, I unexpectedly encountered Crispin Farley at the hospital. He was wearing a subtle yet expensive outfit, carefully supporting Meredith Elwell's hand, gently protecting her slightly swollen belly. He stood out handsomely in the crowd. I hobbled after him on my crutches, desperately calling out, "Crispin Farley." He turned around. I watched him expectantly, afraid to blink lest I miss any expression. His gaze lingered on me for a moment, pondering, then he turned away. He didn't recognize me. The 6 years we had loved each other, the 6 years I had lived a life of luxury in high society. Now, only I remembered,